The photograph arrived in a manila envelope with no return address, just a postmark from a town in Vermont that hasn't existed since 1923. Inside was a single image, daguerreotype, cracked and faded, showing 67 people standing around an open grave. Every single person in that photograph was smiling, not the polite, somber smile you might see at a celebration of life service. These were wide, genuine grins, teeth showing, eyes bright, and in the center of the group, propped up in a chair at the edge of the grave, was the corpse. My name is Michael Voss, and I'm a folklorist specializing in American death rituals. I've spent 15 years cataloging the strange ways communities have dealt with mortality. I've documented jazz funerals in New Orleans, sky burials described by Tibetan immigrants, elaborate Victorian mourning traditions. I thought I'd seen everything. Then I saw that photograph, and I realized I'd never seen anything at all. The corpse in the chair was a woman, maybe 40 years old, dressed in a white gown that was too clean, too bright. Her eyes were open. That's what made me look twice, then 3 times, then grab my magnifying glass. Her eyes were open, and they weren't the clouded, vacant eyes of the dead. They were looking at something, at someone, and her mouth, slightly parted, seemed to be forming a word. On the back of the photograph, written in careful script, Stillwater, Vermont, November 14, 1890, the first sitting, may God forgive us for what we learned. I spent 3 weeks trying to track down any information about Stillwater, Vermont. It didn't appear in any historical registry, any census record, any map. It was as if the town had been deliberately erased. But I'm persistent, and I have resources. I finally found a reference in a letter collection at the Vermont Historical Society, a correspondence between 2 physicians dated 1891. One line stood out: the incident at Stillwater has been contained, all records destroyed per order. We speak of it no more. That's when I knew I had to find where Stillwater used to be. The local historical societies were useless. The state archives had gaps in their records for that entire region during the 1890s. But I found an antique dealer in Montpelier who specialized in Victorian-era estate sales, and she remembered something. Her grandmother had told her about a valley that people used to avoid, a place where there had been a town once. But something had happened there that made everyone leave. She drew me a map on a napkin, marking the location with an X, and the words, "Don't go alone." I went alone. The valley was exactly where her grandmother said it would be, about 40 miles from any main road, accessible only by a logging trail that hadn't been maintained in decades. The forest there was wrong. I'm not being superstitious. I mean, it was botanically wrong. The trees grew in perfect circles, their branches all pointing inward toward the valley center. The undergrowth was too thick, too aggressive, as if the forest was trying to reclaim something, trying to bury it. I found the town just before sunset, or what was left of it. About 30 structures, mostly collapsed, consumed by vines and rot. A church with a caved-in roof. A general store with its windows intact, but filmed over with something that wasn't quite dirt. Houses with doors still closed, which was somehow more unsettling than if they'd been open. And in the center of it all, a cemetery. The cemetery was pristine. While everything else had been devoured by time and nature, the cemetery looked maintained. The grass was trimmed. The headstones were clean. The iron fence was rust-free. It was impossible, but there it was. And in the very center of the cemetery was something that made my skin crawl. A large circular structure made of stone, like a raised platform with a chair in the middle. The same chair from the photograph. I took pictures of everything as the light faded. I should have left before dark. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to get back to my car, but I saw something that made me stay. On one of the headstones a name, Margaret Holloway, 1008, 150-1890, November 14, the same date as the photograph. I pulled out the image and compared. The woman in the chair, the corpse at the center of the smiling crowd. This was her grave. Then I noticed something else. Every grave in that cemetery had the same death date. November 14, 1890. Every single one. 7 graves, 7 people. All died on the same day. I heard the humming just as the sun touched the horizon. It was coming from the church. A low, resonant sound, multiple voices in harmony, singing something that wasn't quite a hymn. The melody was wrong. The intervals between notes too wide, too strange. It sounded less like music, and more like a summoning. I should have run. Instead, I walked toward the church. The door was open now. I was certain it had been closed moments before. Inside, the pews were still intact, arranged in rows facing an altar, and on that altar was a book. Not a Bible, something else. Bound in leather that looked too much like skin. Pages yellowed but perfectly preserved. I opened it. The handwriting was immaculate. Each entry dated and signed. It was a record. A chronicle, and it started with an entry dated November 12, 1890. Margaret Holloway has died. She was loved by all. We cannot bear to put her in the ground. Pastor Williams has suggested an alternative. We will try the old sitting tomorrow night. The old sitting. That phrase appeared throughout the book, referenced like everyone knew what it meant. I flipped through pages, finding more entries, more deaths, more sittings. But the dates were wrong. They went backward. November 13, 1889. November 13, 1888. November 13, 1887. Every year on November 13, someone in Stillwater died, and every year they performed the old sitting. Then I found the entry that explained everything, dated November 13, 1834, written by someone named Ezekiel Marsh. We brought the tradition from the old country. The Fae taught it to our ancestors in the dark times, when death was so common that the living could not outnumber the dead. Sitting allows us to keep them with us for one more night, to say what was left unsaid, to hear their wisdom one final time. But there are rules. The body must be fresh, dead less than a day. The sitting must happen in a circle of the living, never fewer than 13. And you must never ever ask them what they see on the other side. For if you ask, they will answer, and once you hear the answer, you become part of what they see. My hands were shaking as I read. The entries continued year after year. The ritual performed faithfully every November 13, when someone died. The dead would be propped in the chair, surrounded by the living, and for 1 hour, exactly 1 hour, they would be animate, not alive. The writer was very clear about that. They were not alive, but they could move. They could speak, they could interact. For 1 hour, the boundary between death and life would thin enough for the community to have their goodbye. And then I found the entry for November 14, 1890, written in a different hand, shaking and desperate. God help us all. Someone asked Margaret what she saw, and she told them. She told all of them. Now they won't stop looking. They see it now, all of them. They see what's waiting, and they can't unsee it. They're killing themselves one by one. They're walking into the cemetery and lying down and just stopping. 66 people dead in 18 hours. I'm the last one. I can see it now too. Margaret showed us. It's so much worse than we thought. It's not darkness waiting. It's not nothing. It's the entry ended there mid-sentence. The pen had trailed off the page. I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I turned, and in the doorway of the church, silhouetted against the dying light, was a figure. A woman. She was wearing a white dress, too clean, too bright. Her eyes were open, and she was looking directly at me. You found us, she said, and her voice sounded like wind through a crack in a wall. We've been waiting so long for someone to find us, to understand. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body had locked. She stepped closer, and I could see her more clearly now. It was her. Margaret Holloway. Exactly as she appeared in the photograph, unchanged by the 133 years since her death. We're still here, she continued. All of us still sitting, still waiting, because once you see it, you can't leave. You become part of the watching, part of the vigil, and now that you've read the book, now that you know what happened, you're part of it too. What did they ask you? I managed to whisper. What did you tell them? She smiled, the same wide smile from the photograph. They asked me what comes after death, and I told them the truth. Do you want to know the truth, Michael Voss? Do you want to know what's waiting? Every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to say no. To run, to get out of that church and never look back. But I'm a folklorist. I've spent my entire life collecting stories, documenting beliefs, understanding how humans cope with mortality. And here was the answer to the oldest question we have. What happens when we die? Yes, I said, I want to know. Margaret's smile widened. Behind her, other figures began to appear in the doorway, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all wearing that same expression. All waiting to see if I would understand. Nothing. Margaret said. That's what's waiting, but not the nothing you imagine, not peaceful oblivion, not darkness, not rest. It's aware nothing. It's conscious emptiness. You stop existing, but the awareness of having existed never stops. You're a memory that can't forget itself. You're an echo that never fades. You're trapped in the moment of your last thought, forever, experiencing it, reliving it, unable to move forward or back. That's what death is. That's what awaits every single person who has ever lived or ever will live. An eternity of being almost nothing, almost gone, but never quite fully erased. Forever on the edge of disappearing but never making it over that edge. The room was filling with them now, the 67 people from the photograph, all standing around me in a circle, all watching me with those two bright eyes. When they heard this, Margaret continued, when they truly understood what I was describing, they all saw it. They all felt it. The future they were walking toward, and they couldn't bear it. So they chose to stop walking. They chose to freeze themselves in the last moment before the nothing. And the old sitting ritual, it worked too well. It kept them here. It keeps all of us here. Not alive, not dead, but sitting, forever in that 1 hour that never ends. I looked at their faces, really looked. And I saw it. They weren't smiling. Not really. Their mouths were stretched in grins, but their eyes were screaming. They were trapped in an expression of joy, while experiencing eternal horror. The ritual had frozen them in the moment of the sitting, that 1 hour of animation, but without the context of time, that hour had become infinite. You have a choice now, Margaret said. You can leave. You can walk out of this valley and never come back. You can publish your findings, tell the world about Stillwater, about the old sitting, about what we learned. And then, every night for the rest of your life, you'll lie awake thinking about what I told you. You'll feel it approaching, the aware nothing, the conscious emptiness, and you'll spend your remaining years in terror of every breath that brings you closer to it. She took another step toward me. She was close enough now that I could smell her. She smelled like old flowers and copper and something else. Something that reminded me of the air before a lightning strike. Or, she continued, you can join the sitting. You can let us perform the ritual on you. You can freeze yourself here in this moment before you've truly felt the weight of what you know. You can be trapped in 1 hour forever, but at least you'll never have to face what comes after. You'll never have to experience the aware nothing. You'll be like us, not alive, not dead, but perpetually in between. A photograph that never fades, a story that never ends. The circle around me grew tighter. I could feel their cold radiating off them, a chill that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the absence of life. They were all waiting for my answer, and part of me, a larger part than I want to admit, was considering it. Because she was right, now that I knew I couldn't unknow it, every moment from now on would be poisoned by the awareness of what was coming. There's a third option, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I can choose not to believe you. Margaret's smile faltered for the first time. Excuse me. You're trapped because you believed. I said, the words coming faster now as I understood. Everyone who died that day, they believed what you told them. They accepted it as absolute truth. But belief shapes experience. Every culture has different ideas about the afterlife because belief creates the framework for what we experience. You told them your truth, and they made it their truth, and now they're trapped in it. But it's not the only truth. It's just one possibility. The figures around me began to waver, like a photograph losing focus. I'm sorry for what happened to you, I continued. I'm sorry that you saw something so terrible that it destroyed your community. But I don't accept your vision as universal law. Death might be what you described, or it might be something else entirely, something better, something worse, something incomprehensible. But I won't let your fear become my prison. Margaret screamed. It was a sound no human throat should be able to make. A shriek of rage and despair, and something else, envy. She envied my ability to reject her truth, to walk away from the certainty that had destroyed her. The church began to shake. The figures around me were dissolving, their forms losing cohesion, as if my refusal to believe in their permanent state was somehow destabilizing it. The book on the altar burst into flames, the pages curling and blackening, the leather binding cracking. I ran, through the church doors across the cemetery into the forest. Behind me, I could hear them screaming, all 60. 7 voices raised in a chorus of anguish and fury. The trees seemed to bend toward me, trying to hold me back, but I pushed through. The logging trail, my car. The engine started on the first try, and I drove without looking back. Drove until the sun came up and I was 100 miles away. I didn't publish my findings. I couldn't. Because here's what haunts me, what keeps me awake every night. I don't know if I was right. I don't know if belief really shapes the afterlife, or if I just told myself that to escape. I don't know if Margaret's vision was true or false or somewhere in between. And that uncertainty is its own kind of torture. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 weeks after I left Stillwater, I started receiving letters. Letters from all over the country, all with the same postmark from that town that doesn't exist. Each letter contained a photograph. Different people, different years, but always the same setup. A corpse in a chair. A circle of smiling people. And on the back of each photograph, a date and a location. Always November 13. Always a different town. Stillwater wasn't the only place that practiced the old sitting. It was just the place where it went wrong, or where they got caught. I have 43 photographs now. 43 communities spread across the United States and Canada that performed this ritual at some point between 1790 and 1956. Some of the towns still exist, some don't, but all of them had their November 13. All of them lost people to the sitting, one way or another. And then I found the pattern. Every town that practiced the old sitting had one thing in common: a mass disappearance or mass death event in their history. Stillwater had 67 people die in one day. A town in Pennsylvania had 83 people vanish without a trace in 1823. A settlement in Oregon had every resident found dead in their beds on the same morning in 1867. The pattern was consistent. The ritual would be practiced safely for years, sometimes generations. Then someone would ask the question. Someone would want to know what death looked like, and the person in the chair would answer. And everyone who heard the answer would be destroyed by it. But here's the truly terrifying part. I found evidence that the ritual is still being practiced. Right now, in communities across North America. Small towns where everyone knows everyone, where traditions run deep, where people keep secrets from outsiders. They perform the old sitting every November 13 when someone dies. They follow the rules. They never ask what the dead see, and as long as they don't ask, it's fine. The dead get their hour. The living get their goodbye. Everyone moves on, unless someone asks, unless someone breaks the rule, unless someone demands to know the truth. I've been tracking these communities for 5 years now. I've identified 23 that I believe still practice the ritual. I've driven through these towns, watched from a distance, tried to gather evidence. But they know I'm looking. They know someone from outside is paying attention, and they are protecting the tradition. Last November 13, I received a phone call. Unknown number. I answered and heard breathing on the other end. Heavy, wet breathing. Then a voice, Margaret's voice. This year, we're sitting you, Michael Voss. Whether you're dead or not. This year, you join the circle, and we'll make you tell us if you were right. We'll make you tell us what you really think is waiting, and then we'll all know the truth. The line went dead. I didn't leave my house on November 13. I locked every door, covered every window, stayed awake the entire night with every light on. Nothing happened. No figures appeared. No ghostly visitations. But when the sun rose on November 14, I found something on my porch. A photograph. Recent, high quality, in color. It showed a circle of people standing around an empty chair. The chair from Stillwater. And every person in the photograph was looking directly at the camera. Directly at me. Smiling those wide, terrible smiles. On the back, a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. The chair is always waiting. The circle is always forming. Sooner or later, everyone takes their turn in the sitting. The only question is whether you choose it, or whether it chooses you. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know. I need there to be a record, just in case. November 13 is in 6 days. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Margaret and the others can actually reach me, or if this is all psychological warfare, trauma. Induced paranoia stemming from what I experienced in that church. But I keep thinking about what she said, about the aware nothing, about the consciousness that can't end. Because if that's true, if death really is an eternal moment of almost dissolution that never completes, then maybe the sitting isn't a trap. Maybe it's a mercy. Maybe being frozen in 1 hour forever is better than facing an eternity of fading without ever fully fading. I don't know. And that's the most terrifying part. I don't know. What I do know is this. The tradition never died. It's still out there, still being practiced, still waiting for someone to ask the wrong question. And now that I've told you about it, now that you know it exists, you're part of the story too. You're connected to it. And if you ever find yourself in a small town on November 13, and you notice everyone seems to be gathering somewhere after dark, and you hear humming that doesn't quite sound like music, walk away. Don't investigate. Don't ask questions. Don't try to document it. Because the sitting is always looking for new participants. The circle is always expanding. And once you see that chair, once you understand what it's for, you can never fully look away. Some part of you will always be sitting there, waiting for your turn. I have to go now. There's a sound outside my door, a familiar sound, multiple people, breathing in unison, humming that melody that isn't quite a hymn. I can see shadows under my door, many shadows, all standing very still. They've come for the sitting, and I finally understand. It started at one funeral in 1890. It started with one question, one answer. One moment of curiosity that destroyed a town. But it didn't end there. It spread like an infection, like a story that couldn't be contained. Because humans can't help themselves. We always want to know. We always need to understand. We always ask the question we shouldn't ask. What happens after death? Margaret answered it. And now she wants me to confirm or deny her answer. She wants validation or refutation. She wants someone else to carry the burden of that knowledge. The door is opening. I didn't unlock it, but it's opening anyway. I can see them now. 67 people, no, more than that. Hundreds. Everyone who ever participated in a sitting that went wrong. Everyone who ever heard the answer. Everyone who's been trapped in that eternal hour between life and death. And at the front of the group, Margaret Holloway, still wearing her white dress, still smiling that terrible smile. Time to sit, she says. Time to answer. What do you really think is waiting, Michael Voss? Tell us. Make it true or make it false, but tell us. The chair is behind me now. I don't know how it got here. It's the same chair from the cemetery, the same chair from all the photographs. And I'm so tired of running, of wondering, of being haunted by a question that can't be answered. Maybe I will sit. Maybe I'll let them perform their ritual. Maybe I'll become part of the tradition that never died. Maybe that's the ending I was always walking toward. Or maybe I'll do what I did in the church. Maybe I'll refuse to give them what they want. Maybe I'll say that I don't know, that no one knows, that all we have are beliefs and fears and hopes, and none of them are certain. Maybe uncertainty is the only honest answer. The circle is forming around me now. They're all here. Everyone who ever sat. Everyone who ever asked. Everyone who ever answered. They're waiting to see what I'll do. Waiting to see if I'll add my truth to their collection, or if I'll keep insisting that truth is unknowable. I'm sitting down now, not because they're forcing me, but because I want to understand. After everything I've learned, after everything I've seen, I still want to know. That's the curse of being human. We always want to know. The humming has started. The ritual is beginning, and in 1 hour, exactly 1 hour, I'll either be dead or trapped or transformed into something else. Something between, something that sits forever. And if you're reading this, if someone finds these notes after I'm gone, then you know it happened. You know the sitting claimed another one. And you know that somewhere, in a small town you've never heard of, on November 13 of some year, a group of people will gather around a chair. And the person in that chair might be someone you loved, someone you knew, someone you were. The tradition never dies. It just waits. We all wait, forever sitting, forever asking, forever trying to understand what cannot be understood. The hour is beginning. The circle is complete, and I'm